You're about to watch a great interview on TYT Interviews. If you want to watch them live, members are the only ones who get to do that. TYTnetwork.com/join. Become a member, enjoy the interviews as they happen.
This is Reporting In.
Welcome to Reporting In. I'm your host, Malcolm Fleschner. The TYT member show where we talk to reporters, investigative journalists, others in working in the journalism field, talk to them about the stories they're working on, and maybe a little bit about the stories behind the stories that they're working on, or not, I don't know. Today on the show, I'm excited because we've got a return engagement with none other than TYT Politics' own Emma Vigeland. Emma, welcome to the show.
Hey Malcolm, thanks for having me on.
Gosh, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago when we last spoke, but I guess it was. But you're out visiting LA from your home base in the metropolitan New York City area. And what have you done since you've been here?
So I did the election coverage last night with Cenk and John and Michael Shore, and it was really fun. I mean, the results weren't exactly what we wanted them to be. A lot of progressive candidates didn't make it over the hump. We did have Amar Kampa-Najjar in California's, I believe, 49th district. He got over the hump, so he will be facing Duncan Hunter in the general election. So that's great. But there were a lot of progressive soldiers that fell, to use what Cenk was saying last night. You know, John Keenan was running as a Justice Democrat in the Montana at-large district, and he fell short by just a few percentage points, less than 2% by my last count. So that was a really, really devastating loss because he was not taking any corporate PAC money, and he really gave the establishment a run for their money. So I wouldn't say it was a victory overall for progressives.
Yeah, it was a tough night. I mean, it's a tough road to hoe. I was particularly bummed about Jim Cady in New Jersey, who I talked with a couple of times, once on Aggressive Progressives, I guess, and I was just really impressed with him. And he stood up to Chris Christie, and I sent him money. But listen, if you want to get us, I can guarantee you, if you got my support out in California, that was a guaranteed 2% of the vote that you were going to get statewide. So if that's what you're looking for, definitely court my vote. What about doing the election night coverage? This is as you pointed out, I think earlier, a marathon, not a sprint. This is like you're on the air for hours and hours and hours, which is probably not something you're super used to.
No, I wasn't used to it, and I made the unfortunate choice to go to the beach earlier in the day because I was like, oh, I'm working till midnight. You know, maybe I'll just take an hour and go to the beach and not put on any sunblock. And my face looked insane. And you don't realize how hot it gets under those lights. I thought I was going to literally explode internally. So I got really sunburned.
And it's also the other good thing is that being in the sun. Being in the sun also, I'm sorry, but being in the sun, it also gives you lots of energy later in the day when you spend a lot of time in the sun. I know that. That's for me.
Right. Well, so I'm in New York all the time, and it's just like I've been telling everyone who will listen about the weather there because I just need someone to vent to, but it's hot and it's not even enjoyable like it is here because I'm around concrete and human beings all day. And I love New York City, but you know what New Yorkers love more than New York City is complaining about New York City, and so that's what I'm going to do while I'm here.
So at least we know you belong.
Right.
But you enjoy doing it, and you're also, I think, going to be on. We're recording this on Wednesday, the day after the election, but I believe you are going to be on Friday as well, right?
Yeah, I'll be on the main show on Friday in the first hour, and then I will also be on Damage Report with John tomorrow on Thursday. So lots of fun stuff. I always love coming out here and getting to see you guys and hang out and go on shows and talk politics. So it's not just me, yabbing into the screen all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a fun first time, at least anyway, experience being on air with Cenk for that many hours. Because you would think, how do you fill the time? Because a lot of it, you're just waiting in between results for it to come in, still 13%, whatever. But Cenk, he seems to manage somehow to keep the chatter going.
Well, it's funny because my boyfriend, my friends, they all wonder how I can continue to talk about politics and have questions and arguments to make after the workday is over. Not a lot of my friends are politicos. They're interested, but they're that's not the field that they're in, and so they are baffled by, that I want to watch a Democracy Now! Video on Rohingya Muslims at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday after a long day of work. So I was really in good company with this panel of people who just wants to talk about politics, and I could use all the questions that I had in my arsenal to talk about the election that night. But Cenk really has me beaten. I don't know if anyone can beat Cenk in terms of just having new things to come up with when you're talking about politics.
That's right, to keep up the chatter. But that's a good sign that you're in the right profession, because if you're a podiatrist and you come home and you're still all you think about is feet, then it's probably still that's the right path for you. Or maybe that's not the best example, but let's move on. Not dwell on that.
That was a Rex Ryan. I should have thrown a Rex Ryan joke in there.
There you go. There's your. See, Emma's also here. That's the other thing we talked about the last time you were on was football. But not that there's anything to talk about related to football and politics these days. First, let's for the viewers who aren't familiar with your work and don't watch all your videos religiously on TYT Politics like I do, can you explain what exactly you do at TYT and what your involvement in TYT Politics is, and how what you do with that channel?
Yeah, so I've consistently described my role as kind of a Swiss Army knife. So my official role is producer, but I'm obviously an on-air person. So I'm the host, the main host really of TYT Politics. Now Cenk does Rebel Headquarters videos on there, and Miki's on there occasionally as well. So there's a mix of all of that. I'm producing the content very thoroughly. I'm also researching, doing all that stuff. And then on occasion, and hopefully more frequently, I'll do on-the-ground reports. So my most recent and most thorough on-the-ground report was, I believe we spoke about this when I covered Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign. That was a great day, which involved a lot of planning. I was really proud of that 4-part series that came out about her candidacy. We kind of got in there early. Now everyone's talking about her. Glenn Greenwald's tweeting about her. Our Revolution endorsed her today, which is like the 80th endorsement that she's received. She just got an endorsement from Zephyr Teachout. And as we discussed last night in the primary election coverage, Joe Crowley, her opponent, asked her for a debate. He is a multiple-term incumbent. So that's how scary Alex is to Joe Crowley's campaign. And she's by far, we were also, again, touching on candidates we're emotionally invested in. She's by far the candidate I'm most emotionally invested in coming up.
Yeah, I just remembered the last time you were on, we also talked about Paula Jean Swearingen, who is another one who lost, but who a lot of us have.
But I'll speak candidly. Paula Jean, it wasn't the same. She wasn't going to win in this.
But she was just so impressive. I mean, she's so impressive, and it's hard to imagine that other people being exposed to her were not similarly impressed and would want to go just support her. It's a huge machine. I'd like to get into that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a really good example of a sort of a quintessential Democratic stronghold where the representative, in this case Joe Crowley, just does not reflect the district at all, but he's been entrenched and has been there so long that it will be interesting to see if she's able to knock him off. And the fact that he's asking her for a debate is really potentially a good sign that he's scared that he needs to debate her.
Yeah, and he opened up his first field office there in years. He is beginning to participate in dirty tactics as someone who is a leader in the state Democratic Party. He's moving polling locations, et cetera. So there are a lot of signs that Alex is doing well. He wins re-election just because he has a D next to his name, and it's a heavily Democratic district, 85% around, I believe. So if she wins the primary on June 26th, she will be the next congressman.
Right. Whoever wins that primary is going to win the general. That's
no question.
So let's talk about not only her race, but other progressive versus sort of establishment Democrat races that we've seen now that the California is done, along with Texas. Where is the trend line? What are the takeaways? Is it really just tough row and virtually impossible row to hoe for a lot of these progressives in overcoming not only the entrenched interest or often incumbents, but also the Democratic Party putting their efforts behind these more centrist, moderate, corporatist, whatever you want to call them, Democrats? What's your take on what we've seen so far and what the evidence shows?
Well, it's certainly not hopeless. I mean, that's way too far. I guess the results aren't ideal, but the results aren't disastrous either. I mean, we've had multiple Justice Democrat candidates win their races, and there's many more to come. And it's not just the Justice Democrats. I mean, that's a group that Cenk specifically has a lot of investment in, but there's also the PCCC, and there's Our Revolution. Other wonderfully progressive groups that have endorsed candidates who have seen significant victories around the country. I mean, John Fetterman is a really interesting case for me in Pennsylvania. We've interviewed him on TYT Politics, and he is a 6'6". I mean, I'm estimating burly guy with huge tattoos and a long beard. He looks like a biker, but he got a master's degree from Harvard, and he is as progressive as they come. He's kind of the epitome of what kind of voter I would say is characterized, the mix of the Bernie Trump voter that CNN or whatever likes to talk about, the blue collar working class guy in Pennsylvania, Ohio, et cetera, the forgotten people of America. But those are the kinds of voters that those are the kinds of people that the type of Bernie politics and John Fetterman's politics appeal to. He's a really interesting case, and he came back from behind, I believe was endorsed by Our Revolution, to win, and is going to be a Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor. I really hope I'm getting that right again.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, he had, his previous he was just the mayor of his hometown, which is, I forgot the name of the town, but it's not a particularly big town. It's not like Harrisburg or Philadelphia or anything like that. It's a relatively small town in Pennsylvania, and but also one thing that his, and he's not lieutenant governor yet. All we know is that he's got the Democratic nomination, and so there's still the general to win, and that's not a given like it is in in the Bronx, where Joe Crowley is the current representative. But this isn't his first race, and he is probably he's cashing in on some of the name recognition that he established in previous races. And I wonder about people like Rick Trevino in Texas, Allison Hartson, the Montana, I've forgotten his name, you know his name.
John Heenan.
John Heenan, Paula Jean Swearengin. These people, I mean, of course we would have wanted them to win. It was unlikely they were going to win. It was a really uphill battle. But if realistically the potential win is down the line, where these first couple of races, you're just establishing yourself, introducing yourself to voters, and then you build on that for future elections. Yeah,
again, I also wouldn't put Paula Jean even in the category of John Heenan and Rick Trevino, just because I think the former two had better chances to win. Not taking anything from Paula Jean, but West Virginia is a very tricky state to win in, even as a populist Democrat. I know that Bernie was successful there, but it's tough. I mean, Joe Manchin, I just did a story on this today, is literally saying he might vote for Trump in 2020. That's how deep red it is, so he can keep his seat. It's a terrible strategy. He looks like a disgusting weakling, which is what he is. But that's the reality of the situation. I think that we have to be pragmatic here and not get hysterical is the wrong word, but get emotional about the results here. Progressives have seen great victories. We've had significant losses, but it's an uphill battle. I mean, we can't just throw up our hands and say, let's create a third party, because that's not pragmatic. That's never going to be successful. This is a marathon, not a sprint, just like the election coverage last night. And we're going to have to see gains, and it's going to be gradual, but maybe in 2020 it won't be. And that's what I think me and Cenk and John discussed last night, is that 2018 is really the big stepping stone for 2020, because when Trump got elected, everyone was just so distraught and angry. And I think a lot of people focused on that distraught feeling more than they focused on action. And only recently have people started to discuss primary elections and how important they are. There's been a lot of focus on November and what that will mean in taking back the House and the Senate. But there has been less of a discussion about primary elections, especially. It also doesn't help that they're all on different days and no one knows when to register and when to vote, et cetera. So, but I do think that consciousness will be in full effect in 2020, especially when people see some of these Justice Democrat candidates reaching Congress and actually affecting change, and they're able to spread the word, and maybe more people want to sign up for Justice Democrats. And instead of having 8 months to campaign, they'll have a year and a half, and then maybe Justice Democrats, Our Revolution, PCCC all come together and they say, hey, we're better working together, maybe coordinating, seeing who of these candidates are worth backing, all of us together.
Well, okay, so looking to 2020, before we get there, though, we still have to finish out with 2018. We're not even done with the primary season, and we got more coming up. Not just Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York, but we've got other races in New York. I'd say the Ocasio-Cortez that race is sort of small scale or writ small. What we see going on with Andrew Cuomo and Cynthia Nixon, and there's a lot of excitement among progressives around her campaign, and she's really, I feel like she is punching hard and hitting him where it counts, and she's coming out swinging like nobody's business, and like she's a real candidate, and she means what she's talking about, and she looks like she's running to win, and but are we at the stage where, much like with the candidates, some of whom fell short last night, where we're saying, yeah, she can win, she can do this, she can really do it. Let's all gather around, let's support her and give her some money and make phone calls and all that sort of stuff. But are we kidding ourselves that she really can't win against Andrew Cuomo? Is that the truth, or does she have a shot? I mean, it's hard to tell at these points. But some, like you said with Paula Jean Swearengin, there was a lot of enthusiasm among certain people, and there was a lot of tweeting. But realistically, she wasn't going to beat Joe Manchin. Is that the case in New York, or is there something else going on?
So I'll give a longer answer because I like doing that. So I was talking to
longer than my question, because my question was already pretty long.
Yeah, yes, longer than your question. So I was talking to some people here, and they were saying, look, I was pretty shocked that Allison Hartson didn't win. And I was like, really? Because I wasn't. I mean, I live in New York, and I didn't think it was going to be. I thought it was going to be De Leon and Dianne Feinstein the whole time. And that's because Cenk was talking about Allison a lot, and everyone in this building and probably people in the Los Angeles area have heard of her more than the rest of the state. And that's disappointing. And
California is a huge state, and it's extraordinarily difficult. This is the first race she'd ever run in. Nobody has any idea who she is. A lot of people are just they know Dianne Feinstein. Click, it's done and done. So yeah.
But I'm saying New York is also a huge state.
Yeah.
So I worry that I'm in my bubble by thinking that Cynthia Nixon has a very good chance to win, and that's the longer part of the answer. Is I'm prefacing this by saying, look, I'm in this progressive movement. I'm reporting on it every day, and I'm looking at everything Cynthia Nixon is doing and tweeting. And so I could have a skewed perspective there, but I'm trying as hard as I can be to be objective. I do think she has a real shot. There's one thing that there's a few things that might hurt her. One, she isn't doing enough to focus her campaign outside of New York City. She's talking a lot about the subways. There's a whole other rest of the state, upstate, Albany, Buffalo. She's got to go up there, and she's got to appeal more to those people to carry her over Andrew Cuomo, who has, and that goes to my second point, significant name recognition more than her. I know she's an actress, but Mario Cuomo in New York is beloved. The father of Andrew Cuomo, who is infinitely more progressive than his son, who basically uses bullyish, Trump-like tactics to push his centrism and corporatism and corruption, 3 Cs, forward. He is nothing like Mario, his father. But a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't follow the news day to day. So they see Cuomo, and they're going to check that off. She has to work hard to overcome that, in addition to the upstate thing. And thirdly, the entire Democratic establishment is behind Andrew Cuomo. He got an overwhelming endorsement. Tom Perez of the DNC even made an endorsement, even though the primary isn't over, which is against the bylines, against what they should do. Bernie Sanders just condemned what Perez did yesterday. So, but that has weight. It stacks the deck, and if you have all of the local Democratic Party officials on the side of one candidate, especially an incumbent with massive name recognition, it's a huge hill to climb. But that being said, she's got name recognition too. People are unhappy with Andrew Cuomo, and when Zephyr Teachout ran against him last election cycle, she got almost, I think, around 37% of the vote. I could be wrong about that, but it was in the 30s, and that is significant. It was an off-year election. No one was really paying attention. People didn't know how bad Cuomo was yet. and she still got that significant portion of the vote in running against him.
Yeah, and she had not only very little name recognition, but even people who recognize her name were like, "That's really a name, Zephyr Teachout?"
Right.
So
exactly.
I mean, there's even her name was not recognized as a name.
And Cynthia Nixon is running a campaign similar to Zephyr Teachout's, but with way more production value in her ads, way better messaging tactics, very aggressive, very targeted. I mean, this whole hashtag Cuomo's MTA thing was genius. I think her strategy is to energize a lot of New Yorkers to just go out and vote for her, and maybe that'll carry her over the rest of the state. I don't know. But she has a better chance than Zephyr Teachout, who already did well. So that's why I'm saying don't be shocked if she beats Andrew Cuomo, but don't get complacent either. Obviously, if you're in New York and you're a progressive, vote for Cynthia Nixon. She is, so impressive to me. And when I got to interview her very briefly, or not interview her, but ask her a question at the press conference, the sincerity just radiates. And I really, really find her impressive. And I feel very validated that Miranda was always my favorite Sex and the City character. And everyone said she was the least desirable. But you know what? Miranda was the only person on that show who was a real legitimate person. The rest of them were clowns. I watched for Miranda.
Listen, I'm a Samantha, so I'm not going to even get into that with you. But okay, we're almost out of time. But before we go, first of all, I'm super rooting for her to win, for Cynthia Nixon as well. I will be shocked because it would be shocking. I mean, just you can't really it's indisputable that it would be shocking if she beats Andrew Cuomo, not because it's impossible, but just because it's such a, he's the most powerful Democrat in the country, arguably. So, but before we go, here's my question to you. There's talk of a blue wave in 2018, and the argument from the DNC is let's not F it up. Let's go with candidates who have the best chance of winning, and that means moderate Democrats in these Republican districts, and also apparently moderate Democrats in progressive districts. So what happens to the DNC if the blue wave does not materialize and the Republicans retain the House and the Senate in 2018? Is there going to be a civil war in the Democratic Party?
I mean, I think there already is. Honestly, if the Democratic Party doesn't recuperate and actually gain seats in 2018 and 2020, 2018 there's high expectations, and there should be, because the Democratic Party is in shambles.
The whole argument is we have to win back the House. That's why we all have to fall in line, so we win back the House. I'm sure Bernie Sanders will be blamed and Susan Sarandon if they don't, but realistically, it would seem like that's the argument the progressives could make. Look, you people have messed this up and you're incompetent, we're taking over. And they'd have a good case to make.
Yeah, they'd had a good case to make in 2016. I mean, the progressives should be leading the party. That is absolutely the case. But there is so much institutional, there are so many institutional barriers that are preventing that from happening because the money is on that side. So when the extreme conservatives, when you go further right, took over the Republican Party, no one really cared because, yeah, they hate Muslims and they hate black people, but they're as draconian as the corporatists on the issues of tax cuts and stuff like that. So there wasn't the internal resistance that we're seeing in the Democratic Party. So I still think that the establishment in the Democratic Party is going to have significant influence for the next foreseeable future, but we chip away at that. And I know that sounds like gradualism, and people go, we don't have enough time, we can't afford for gradualism. But we're not actually advocating for gradual policies, we're advocating for pushing, and that then it will gradually chip away until one day the statue will just kind of fall apart when you hit the Achilles heel. I think I'm referencing Hercules.
Yeah, you got like 8 different metaphors you're mixing in there, but nevertheless, we understand what the point you're trying to make. It
crumbles to the ground.
You're making more points you can shake a stick at. All right, we got to go, Emma. Thank you very much for taking time away from your busy LA schedule of sunburning and recuperating. And so I hope everybody will tune in for Friday to watch you on the Power Panel, or did tune in, depending on when this airs. Thanks so much for talking to me. And for you guys at home, I appreciate your tuning in. Next week, we're going to be talking to Carrie Ann Mendoza, who is a journalist in the UK, who's going to tell us about the Windrush scandal. It's really interesting. I'm looking forward to talking to her. And so I hope you'll tune in for that. But in the meantime, thanks for watching this week. And as always, stay strong.
If you like the interview that you just watched, I got great news for you. If you become a Young Turks member, you could watch them live as they happen. Only the members get that. You also get Young Turks live. You also get Aggressive Progressive live and Old School live. Everything is available for the members and commercial free. TYTnetwork.com/join.